Hello and welcome to Signature Africa. This is the channel that informs about Africa's investments, assets, people and places. My name is Bongi Kwala and thank you very much for joining us. We're coming to you live from the OR Tambo Exhibition Center here in Ekurhuleni, east of Johannesburg. This as the Cuban Five have arrived here in the country to personally thank South Africa for the role that it played towards them being released in America. They were arrested in 1998 for, among other things, conspiracy to commit espionage and conspiracy to commit murder. They are here in the country at the invite of the African National Congress. Remember, the leader of the ANC, Nelson Mandela, visited Cuba, the first country that he visited upon his release way back in 1990. And they are here also to reciprocate that kind of a gesture. They were welcomed by the Secretary General of the African National Congress. We also talk to the ambassador of Cuba to South Africa, who tells us more about the relationship between South Africa and Cuba. Stay tuned.
The Cuban Five, also known as Miami Five, arrived in South Africa amid a huge fanfare. As they walked out of the international arrivals at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg, they were pleasantly surprised. South Africa is the first country to receive them since their release from prison. They were convicted in 2001 on various charges, including conspiracy to commit espionage. One of the Cuban Five was released in 2011, one in February 2014, and the remaining three in December last year. The final release followed an agreement between US President Barack Obama and Cuban President Raul Castro to improve the relationship between the two countries. But what is the significance of their visit to South Africa?
Our own members in the alliance have been campaigning, marching to the US embassies all these years demanding their release. So once they heard that they were released, then they started demanding, are they going to come? Why don't we invite them? And I think it was a very good idea that we had to do. We also took it a leaf from Nelson Mandela. When he was released himself, there was a demand from everybody in the world that they also want to celebrate his release. But we then said, let him first be celebrated by South Africans, and only after we will then release him to go and be celebrated by the world. So Cuba and then Nancy spoke about it, and we said, okay, let Cuba celebrate them, let their family also celebrate them. Then sometime this year, we can then invite them. So that is why we're inviting them now. They are here on June month, which is a Freedom Charter month. They are here to celebrate with us the Freedom Charter 60 years celebration. They are here to be celebrated as free men. They are here also to say to them, thank you for participating, some of them, the three of them, in the Battle of Cutequinavalo in Angola, where they defended the revolution of Angola, which led to the independence of Namibia and our own freedom in 1994.
But Cuba is still under a commercial, economic and financial embargo, a blockage, which was imposed by the United States in 1960. Is South Africa ready to break away from the embargo and start trade bilateral with Cuba?
No, we want to demonstrate a friendship between the people of Cuba using the Cuban Five, as you would know. So where we are now, we want to move forward with that relationship, demonstrate to South Africans why it is important that we support Cuba, because we ourselves have received a lot of support from Cuba over time. So we are going to take them to different provinces as they are here, meet different provincial governments and our structures of the movement, but they will conduct a number of lectures so that we get to know what exactly happened in 1998 when they were incarcerated by the US government.
The purpose of their visit to South Africa is to thank the people and the government, including the Tripartite Alliance, who are among the many vociferous voices globally calling for their release. The Cuban Five are here at the invitation of the African National Congress.
The Cuban Five do not just only highlight the international solidarity, they also highlight the fact that the Cold War is crumbling. The fact that Cuba is still blockaded, those are remnants of the Cold War. The fact that these comrades were arrested in America, they were arrested because the allegations themselves captured the intensity of the Cold War. You must remember that Cuba was blockaded by the America because of what is called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Khrushchev planted those missiles in Cuba at the doorstep of America, and America could never forgive Cuba. And what is important today, comrades, is that we're celebrating, but we're committing ourselves that the struggle continues because, yes, the Cuban Five are free. Yes, diplomatic discussion on established diplomatic relations are underway. Yes, we must still call for the lifting of the illegal blockade on Cuba. And that is the commitment we should be making here today as we welcome this comrades here. Now, that Cuba has been removed from the countries that sponsor terrorism is progress to the right direction. But Cuba cannot be blockaded. Everybody must be free to trade and be friends with Cuba. Nelson Mandela told us that we're not going to change our friends once we're free because they're new friends now. We'll stick with our old friends, and when he was released from Robben Island, the first place to visit was Cuba. And it is actually ironic that the first country that the Cuban Five visited is South Africa. That is strengthening our relationship. As two countries, South Africa and Cuba were brothers in arms, were together. So let's summarize the Angolan chapter. But more important in that chapter is the fact that we normally say now the history of Africa will be written as Africa before and after Quito Carnival. That is not a small gesture. It's because people put blood into the struggle of our continent. We are all free because of that war. The Battle of Quito Carnival was decisive. The regime was defeated. The regime was humiliated, and it came back with the tail between the legs.
They will be in South Africa for at least 2 weeks. They will crisscross the country, visiting people and places of political and social significance. One such place is the Oliver and Adelaide Monument. This is a grave of former ANC President OR Tambo and his late wife Adelaide. Straight from the airport upon their arrival, they came here to lay the wreath. The monument is in Ekurhuleni, east of Johannesburg. The executive mayor of Ekurhuleni is Mondli Gungubele.
Tambo and Cuba are two sides of the same coin. Commitment to humanity, preparedness to die for humanity, giving up yourself for humanity. So for them to go to Tambo is coming together of the same pieces that belong to the single whole. And we're also, as a city, very, very excited that such a great legend, Tambo, is in our space. And because of him being in our space, we have an opportunity to witness him coming together with the Cubans who symbolize commitment to humanity. Having followed his leadership, I'm very sure there's a lot he would be happy about, and of course there's a lot he would be unhappy about. There are areas where we are hit by divisions. There are areas where we are taking the country forward. And I dare say he would be happy overall, but there would be areas where I suspect he would have reservations.
Then the business of the day started. The Cuban Five paid their respect to OR Tambo and thanked the people of South Africa for raising their voice against many injustices committed against the people of Cuba.
We wanted to come to pay tribute to a comrade, to a dear friend of Cuba, a dear friend of Fidel, a friend of all revolutionary people in the world, who dedicated his entire life to the freedom of his people. We wanted to pay tribute to Comrade OR Tambo. We appreciate the presence here of some of his relatives and of you all. We want you to know that the example of Comrade Tambo was with us during all our years in prison. We feel a deep admiration for him and for all the fighters for the freedom of South Africa. We spent many months in solitary confinement, and the example of your warriors inspired us all the way through. But we also wanted to come here to thank you for the welcome and to thank you for all the support and the solidarity with Cuba and with the Cuban Five, which was very important for our freedom. If we are here today, is in a good part thanks to all of you and to all your efforts. We wanted to let you know that the same way that we were able to count on you, the people of South Africa, can count on the Cuban Five and on the Cuban people. Let me thank you for this opportunity of bringing the love and the appreciation of the Cuban people for your support.
OR Tambo's son, Dali Tambo, remembers how his father used to narrate the Cuban story to him.
My son, OR Tambo, has applied for membership of the ANC Youth League. I didn't tell him to, he came to me and asked that it happen. So that is in process, and we'll inform you when he receives the card. I hope he may even get it from the SG or the Deputy SG, so it'll be a memorable occasion. But you know, the Tambos are ANC all the way through. Ladies and gentlemen, my task here, which I was given just as I was leaving home, is really just to welcome the Cuban Five and to thank you, as was said, for arriving at the airport and making your first trip here to the grave. We regard you as freedom fighters. We always have done since that day in September 1998 when you were arrested unjustly for trying to stop what was a continuous campaign of terrorism against the Cuban nation and the Cuban people from 1959. Not many people know that of all the countries in the world, Cuba has been the victim of more terrorist attacks than any other. Over 3,500 Cubans have died as a result of those terrorist attacks, and over 2,000 have been injured. We also witnessed your solidarity in Angola, and so you have our admiration. You had it before you arrived, and I'm sure you'll experience that across the country.
The Cuban Five will also be thanked for their sacrifices made during the war in Angola. 3 of them served in Angola during the struggle against apartheid forces. At a press conference, the 3 remembered how it was like in the bush. The Cuban Five will be in South Africa until July the 3rd. They will also visit Parliament.